For Crema Media's Polity, I'm Sanel Dlamini. Investigative journalist Pieter-Louis joins me to discuss about what he calls the Gupta Empire in his book titled The Republic of Gupta, a story of state capture. Welcome, Peter.
Thank you.
When and why did you decide to write about such a controversial family, and how long did it take for you to finish this book?
Yeah, so this book is the result of about a year and a half's writing. I started quite early on, actually, before the whole Gupta storm broke in 2016. You know, towards the end of 2015, I started putting together the research. And I kind of felt that, you know, the Guptas have for quite a while, you know, especially since the Waterkloof landing in 2013, been featured in the news so prominently and so frequently that I decided it was a good idea to sort of pull it all together in a narrative, you know, in a book form, to sort of to produce this kind of like structured story of where the family came from and how they sort of spread their businesses in South Africa.
I have a friend in India who knows nothing about this family. Can you share how this family started their businesses in our country?
Yeah, sure. So they're definitely not one of the bigger players in the Indian economy or sort of in the Indian business fraternity, but they're also not sort of from a dirt poor background. They originate from Uttar Pradesh state, and their hometown is called Saharanpur, which is about 150 kilometers north of the capital, New Delhi. So the father, you know, Gupta Senior, he had a couple of businesses in Saharanpur, including the import and exportation of spices and such businesses. So that kind of provided the seed funding for the Guptas to come to South Africa and then explore new business opportunities here in South Africa.
The Gupta family first made headlines after they landed their commercial aircraft load of wedding guests at the Air Force Base Waterkloof in Pretoria in 2013. Can you tell us, what do you have to say about this incident in your book?
Sure. You know, I think I spent quite a lot of pages exploring and unpacking once again the Air Force Base Waterkloof fiasco, because to me personally it was such a seminal moment in the Gupta saga and the Gupta sort of history in South Africa. The Waterkloof debacle was a watershed moment because for the first time, I think, South Africans kind of collectively realized, oh my goodness, look how powerful this family is. Look at the influence they yield, and look at what this influence can help them achieve. You know, landing a private jet full of wedding guests at a private military or at a military facility. It is actually sort of preposterous. So I took the whole Waterkloof saga. I looked at the landing. I got documents from the NDF's Board of Inquiry. I got other government investigative documents on the incident. I spoke to a couple of sources who attended the actual wedding, and I looked at sort of the fallout from this debacle and kind of how the ANC as a ruling party kind of went into panic mode because they realized how big a transgression this was and how badly this reflected on the ANC-led government.
Can you also tell us about your investigations into how the Guptas involved themselves in the South African cricket scene?
Sure. I think this was very important for me to unpack because their capture, and I call it their capture of Cricket South Africa, that kind of runs parallel to their capture of state-owned companies like Eskom and Transnet and key government departments and entities like the office of President Jacob Zuma. So it's almost like Cricket South Africa was a little bit of a test run for them, you know, to practice their state capture activities. So quite early on, you know, here in 2004-05 already, they start to acquire the naming rights to the most prominent South African cricket venues, you know, such as Sahara Park, Newlands in Cape Town and St. George's Oval in Port Elizabeth and a couple of others. And that kind of marks the start of their gradual wholesale takeover of Cricket South Africa, and this later actually culminates in a situation where they literally summon the board of Cricket South Africa to their Saxonwold estate on the eve of board meetings of CSA. You know, so one wonders what actually happens and what is discussed at Saxonwold and how this affects the decision made at these board meetings the next day.
Can you also remind us about the details of what you call the Shishen Saga in one of the chapters of the book?
Yes, no, absolutely. This is a early instance where Duduzane Zuma, you know, President Jacob Zuma's representative in the Gupta business empire, where he starts getting involved in these large-scale mining and business deals with the Gupta family. So quite shortly, you know, there was a company called Imperial Crown Trading, which was run by a Gupta associate called Jagdish Parekh, and they managed to, in a very strange manner, they managed to get the mineral rights to a stake in the Sishan iron ore mine in the Northern Cape province. So there was this ongoing battle between ICT and ArcelorMittal, which is the large steel manufacturer. ArcelorMittal was the previous sort of minority shareholder in this mining right of the Sishan iron ore mine. So ICT then sort of applied for it because ArcelorMittal's mining right had expired. So then, on a very strange way, ICT had somehow learned that it was about to expire, and then we later learned that there's all sorts of meddling, you know, from the Department of Mineral Resources. ICT managed to, you know, backdate their application and all sorts of strange dealings. So for the first time, we see very sort of curious activities, you know, between the Guptas and even the government department like the DMR.
How did you go about accessing such exclusive data on this family?
Sure, I think it's a bit of a concoction of already available documents, you know, public documents. Some of it I had to access via the Public Access to Information Act, or Promotion of Access to Information Act, the PIA Act. Some of it is provided to me by you know, confidential sources who either worked for or work in the Gupta sort of business network to this day. So it's just a sort of a very broad approach to collect and analyze as much data and information as possible on this family.
President Jacob Zuma supporters have argued that the Gupta family had relations with former presidents Thabo Mbeki as well as Nelson Mandela. How far back do they relate with the prominent South African political people?
Sure, I think my sort of, after writing this book, my conclusion is that they, at a very early stage, embarked on a very deliberate attempt to get close to the ruling party. And there are all sorts of indications that this even happened in the mid to late 1990s. You know, at a juncture when, you know, President Jacob Zuma was still an MEC in the KwaZulu-Natal province, then already, you know, they start getting close to President Jacob Zuma and to Duduzane Zuma. So I think it was a very, very sort of structured and deliberate effort to get close to the ruling elite. And then obviously also we know about now, thanks to some research through my book, you know, that Ajay Gupta also served on this consultative council that President Thabo Mbeki used to convene at the presidential guest house in Pretoria.
Are you surprised that nothing has been done since the release of the state of capture report that was released by former public protector Thuli Madonsela?
Unfortunately, I think I am not too surprised. You know, I think time and time again we sit with a situation where very real and profound details of corruption involving top-level government officials surface, and then there's no subsequent, you know, effort by the Hawks and the NPA to actually prosecute. So I think it seems like we've reached possibly a little bit of a turning point. I now see reports that the Hawks are taking state capture seriously. Apparently they are investigating, and hopefully, you know, the NPA will then prosecute.
Do you think that it's fair to say that our country has been captured by the Gupta family, and do you think that their grip is now unraveling, or is it just as tight as ever? No,
sure. I think the latest Gupta leaks revelations, I think previous media reports, I think that's definitely contributed to a situation where they are increasingly in a corner, and it's going to be increasingly difficult for them to maintain these capture networks, you know, and to maintain their grip on the presidency and sort of the ruling elite around President Jacob Zuma. I think, you know, especially if you look at the increasing calls for a commission of inquiry into state capture, as mentioned earlier, you know, the Hawks' renewed interest in state capture as something to investigate. I think we're definitely sitting with probably a very nervous family at Saxonwold.
The story about the Gupta family seems nowhere near an end. Are we likely to hear about another book on the family in the near future?
I would like to explore the fallout from the Gupta leaks and sort of new information that have been brought forward in a sequel. So it's definitely on the cards. Yeah, it's definitely a possibility.
Thank you for your time, Peter. That was investigative journalist Pieter-Louis speaking to Crema Media's Polity about his book titled The Republic of Gupta, A Story of State Capture.